we're in a pretty tight spot. We were in a very difficult spot in 24. The position is probably eroded into 25. And I kind of personally, just speaking for myself, over a career, whatever's remaining going forward, we could do death by 1,000 cuts of playing the game the way it was being played, or we can do something about it.
That's Jim Sayle. He's a cotton farmer in northwest Mississippi. Jim and his wife Mallory and their kids Rebecca and Hugh live on land that Jim's family has been farming for the last 7 generations. It's a beautiful way of life, but there are dark clouds gathering on the horizon, a combination of extreme weather, environmental regulation, and a new set of tariffs threaten to make the economics of what Jim does unworkable. This week, we're talking about hunting, fishing, and tariffs with a side of crawfish etouffee here on What is America? Week 3, and we're having weather. Severe thunderstorms, 70-mile-an-hour winds, and golf ball-size hail. Welcome to the Mississippi Delta. And welcome to you. This is What is America, and I'm John. For the next year, I'm going to drive all over the country and talk to people about their lives. Together, we're going to figure out the news story of America, what gets us out of bed in the morning, what we struggle with, and what we're building toward as a nation. I'm here for another 2 weeks in Memphis, Tennessee, and then I'm off to Gainesville, Florida. To learn more about our itinerary and stay connected, visit our website, whatisamericapodcast.com. So, in San Francisco, we don't really have weather. Every day is between 50 and 80 degrees. It's either sunny or it's foggy, and that's it. So, I kind of forgot what weather is like. Fortunately, the Mid-South has been only too happy to remind me. Last week, we got 11.4 inches of rain in 3 days. For context, that's about half as much rain as San Francisco gets in a whole year. The day after the thunderstorms, I tried to go running on my favorite trail here, the Wolf River Greenway, and I couldn't because it was underwater. In between thunderstorms, I did manage to drive up to Franklin, Tennessee, just outside of Nashville, to see my cousins, Brig and Mindy, and their daughter, Addie. We got to give Addie a send-off to her junior prom, which was great. And can I just say, Addie, JD, you guys look so beautiful. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Since I started the podcast, many of you have asked me, John, is there any hope? It's a question I take very seriously. And as of last Saturday, I can now conclusively say, yes, there is hope. Specifically, the Hope Cafe in Jackson, Tennessee. I'd heard about this place before, and I finally got to check it out on my drive up to Franklin. The cool thing about Hope is that everybody who works there is in recovery from some kind of addiction. It's a way for them to reintegrate into the workforce. The vibe is great, the servers are very handsome, and the brisket is yummy. Highly recommend. Okay, let's talk about the interview. Jim Sayle is growing cotton, corn, and soybeans on 2,500 acres in and around Lake Cormorant, Mississippi. His nearest neighbor is about half a mile away, and Jim says he likes it that way. He takes care of his property, and they take care of theirs. On the day of the interview, I actually couldn't drive all the way up to Jim's farm because the road was flooded out. I had to park Alexi at a local store, and then Jim drove us across what appeared to be a small lake in his Ford F-250. Turns out, that lake was one of his fields. It's still early in the growing season, but Jim had already planted some corn, and much of it was washed out by the heavy rain. That's just one of the ways small farmers are subject to forces outside their control. Forces like extreme weather and environmental regulation and tariffs. Let's be clear. Running a small farm in America is not a fabulously profitable profession. And Jim says the government is not helping. He struggles to make sense of this new round of tariffs. And when it comes to environmental regulation, he says the government is applying a one-size-fits-all solution, failing to take into account the specific needs of his profession and the local ecosystem. 2025 was already shaping up to be a tough year for farmers in this part of the country. But Jim says the combination of extreme weather and government interference may make the economics downright unworkable. Still, he believes in his heart that everything is going to turn out okay. For that, he credits his Christian faith and his belief in the power of personal responsibility. Okay, one more thing and we'll get going. It's almost Easter, and this is an Easter egg. On the day of our conversation, Mallory, Jim's wife, had just brought home some baby chickens. They were staying in the house to keep warm, and if you listen very carefully during the interview, you can actually hear them peeping at different moments. Give it a listen and see if you can catch any of those moments. So, hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Doing well. Sun shining.
Good. It's beautiful down here.
Thank you. We enjoy it down here.
Yeah. Where are we?
We are in Lake Cormorant, Mississippi, DeSoto County, northwestern Mississippi, as far north and west as you can get in the state.
Nice.
Right next to the Mississippi River, just south of Memphis.
Cool. So for this part only, I want you to look right in the middle of the lens and introduce yourself like you would introduce yourself to a new friend.
My name is Jim Sayle. Farm for a living, and it's good to meet you.
Say a bit more about yourself. Still that way.
Enjoy spending time with my family and like to hunt and fish and generally be outdoors.
So, okay, you grew up here, like in this...
I grew up here, born in Memphis, Tennessee, just because that's where the hospital was. And brought down here, I guess, whenever they released them, and I've been here pretty much ever since outside of college.
So that, we moved around a lot. What does it feel like to be on the property where you've lived kind of your whole life?
I think I'm kind of tied to the land, I guess you can say, and I've looked at that dynamic of what it would be like to pick up and move across town or across the country or just go somewhere else, and my livelihood and the land. You can't really pick that up and move it. I could move to somewhere else, but I could probably sustain myself here for the most part. I'm not a homesteader or a prepper or anything, but I can, between deer and duck and turkey and fish and dove, I could probably find something to eat. Obviously grow commodity products, which aren't, just go take it in the house and cook it. But I could, if I needed to, have a big garden. Gardens are popular in the spring and the fall, but not so much in the summer around here.
Wow. Because why not in the summer?
Very hot and very humid.
Got it.
The humidity here is intense, which makes the cold colder and the hot hotter.
So do you plant tomatoes here, for example?
We have had some success with tomatoes in the past. Recently, some farm technology, which is kind of a sore subject. Tomatoes have been difficult to grow.
Oh. Okay, said sore subject. Maybe I don't touch it.
Well, we utilize a lot of technology on the farm, and that could be in genetic technology or chemistry. And we have various invasive weeds that are becoming more problematic to manage. And a technology that came to market several years ago has increased or has volatility. And so even under ideal conditions, sometimes you can apply the chemistry in one place, weather conditions change 24, 36 hours later, and that chemistry can move. And very susceptible plants, like a tomato, it's very hard on tomatoes.
Okay, wow.
So grow your tomatoes in the fall. Okay.
Very good. Yeah, we grew some tomatoes in our tiny little plot of backyard in San Francisco.
Yeah.
We were pulling more tomatoes off those bushes than we knew what to do with, which was cool.
Everything likes to grow down here. The weeds, the crops, just it would be a jungle. Yes. It'd be a jungle left to its own devices.
Okay.
This would be a Mississippi River hardwood bottom, batcher ground. It would flood in the spring and just ebb and flow.
That's cool. So this would be a forest? Is that what that means?
We're in the Mississippi Delta, which is a flood plain.
Okay.
And if you look at it from a topographical standpoint, or like an aerial image, you can see it, just the distinct shape. And that's where the river was allowed to spread out and slow down and deposit sediment over years, creating some of the most fertile soil in the world as far as depth. And it has some great advantages. Our proximity to the river, which where we're sitting right now is, maybe 3 or 4 miles from the Mississippi River, we can pump irrigation water, essentially filtered river water, which is very advantageous to growing crops.
Is that why your ancestors picked it?
That's a good question. I think they were already in the neighborhood, or this is where they set up shop. And of course, back then, going to town was a big event. To go from here to Memphis was a real journey. Whereas now we could be in downtown Memphis in 15, 20 minutes, depending on how fast you want to drive.
As we know, I want to drive fast.
There you go.
Got myself a speeding ticket on the way up. What kind of car do you drive?
I drive a Ford F-250 pickup truck.
Why the F-250?
It's the amount of weight the truck can haul or handle, and I have tools and stuff in the bed of the truck. So
right on.
Some days it's nice to have. Some days I wish I had a little car. It can beat you up on the road, but I like it. I think it rides very well.
Yeah, Alexi couldn't make it here because it's flooded, but that F-250 had no problem.
Yeah, it was. It's. I don't know how much deeper I'd like to go in the water, but typically we don't have to drive through flood water to get here.
What is something people may not know about you?
I like to draw. I don't really make time for that anymore. Just like everybody else, it's go, go, go all the time. And so most of my drawing now includes coloring with my daughter or my son. So fill in the blanks. My daughter has buckets of pencils and markers, and we'll entertain ourselves with that a little bit, but not a lot of freehand stuff.
So yours is a family of artists.
Correct. Most of the folks on my mom and my dad's side all have some artistic talent, be it singing or painting or carving, or my grandfather played the flute. So I'm not overachieving in that department.
When you are drawing, kind of where does your mind go, or what does that do for you when you draw?
A lot of times I'll just do basic sketches that don't take a lot of investment, whereas larger pieces, I feel like once I start it, I've got to finish it. And then it needs to be finished, and it's something else to do. So I might just doodle around a little bit on the margins.
So what do you draw?
Oh, well, just doodling. I mean, I'll just draw shapes and shadows and just abstract stuff.
Do you have anything around?
No, I mean, it's like, no, I can't say I doodle on the bulletin in church, because that would indicate might be idle. But no, that's pretty much the extent of it. And then, with Rebecca, she'll like to color and stuff, and she draws a lot. And I'll take one book and do some coloring, which she critiques, and it's time we can spend together.
Okay. Her critiquing you?
Not enough color, too much color. And if she gets bored, she'll try to kick me in the knee or something to get me outside the lines.
What's your favorite food?
I like Creole food, Cajun food. Love eating in New Orleans. Have some kind of I don't know what the right word, kind of the definitive Cajun cookbooks in the kitchen, and we enjoy going through those. And when I'm not doing that, I enjoy barbecue.
Okay. Favorite dish?
Probably blackened catfish with crawfish etouffee over the top, or a crawfish cream sauce.
Wow. I can honestly say I've never had that, but it sounds delicious.
Missing out.
Yeah. And you're a hunter.
I do. I enjoy pretty much everything around here. Where we're at, we have good dove hunting, good turkey hunting, good deer hunting. Duck hunting's hit or miss. I've had some very good hunts recently. I've had some kind of social events. We'll call it that, because nothing was harmed in the making of some of those hunts. But no, I enjoy being outdoors, and of course, some of that, the dove and the duck are much more social events. And so a lot of my friends can come down and we'll spend time afield, maintaining traditions, I guess. We're not starving, obviously. We eat. I like to say we eat everything we kill. Some of it ends up in the freezer too long and might end up getting thrown away.
This is slightly out of shot, but there is a bobcat right there.
No, we didn't eat the bobcat. He looked much better when he was alive, and now we get to enjoy him. I guess he would have been around. I don't know what the lifespan of a bobcat is, but now he'll get to spend the rest of his life, I guess, having some value.
I'll snap some photos before I get out of here, but this house is full of amazing, what's it called? Taxidermy. And you shot most of it, right?
I think everything in here I've taken.
Okay, cool. And I think in shot just behind you actually is a couple of deer in there, right?
We have some deer, and I've got a turkey fan that I carry with me behind the levee to chase turkeys with.
Who were some of your big influences growing up?
My namesake, my grandfather, Dr. James G. Hughes, was very accomplished, and that was just how you did things. And, you weren't going to sit on the couch or be lazy, or we were here to not necessarily, achieve greatness, but we were to be productive members of society and contribute to our families. And that's kind of sums it up, I guess. So I looked up to that as far as motivation to, do things, to step outside of my comfort zone and accomplish, I guess you could say, participate. That and several professors at Mississippi State, I really appreciated the education there. And those professors specifically knew not only the topic at hand, but a lot of issues around and other general knowledge, so you could apply the learning to the real world and not just a textbook.
And you said your grandfather was a Renaissance man, and it sounded like these professors really took an interest in you. What stamp do you think that left on you?
I guess inquisitive and figure it out, make it work. If you don't like what it's doing or your situation, it's your responsibility to fix that.
I like that. Personal responsibility.
Correct.
Did you always know you wanted to be a farmer?
Probably deep down, at any point I could have said, yeah, sure, I'll do that the rest of my life. I still enjoy, it's work sometimes, obviously. But there are a lot of days that, it's just what I do all day long.
It's interesting because I didn't know about Bob and Jane, your siblings, and they presumably don't live here anymore. Is that true?
Correct.
So you got the bug, but somehow they didn't.
Well, some days I wonder if they're the smart ones.
Hey, me again. As some of you know, I spent the last 8 years working in tech. And there's this thing that everybody in tech likes to say all the time. We're building the plane as we fly it. Basically, it means that what we're doing is new, so we're figuring it out as we go. It's kind of wild. It's exciting and a little scary. 3 episodes in, and that is definitely where we are with this podcast. We are building the plane as we fly it. So if you could like this episode, comment on it, and subscribe to my channel, gosh, that would mean a lot to me. Hey, you could even send it to a friend who might enjoy it. Okay, back to the interview. Something when we were getting ready, you suggested I ask you was, do farmers care about the environment?
Absolutely. We have to. It's our workplace. We take great care to manage our properties, the right product in the right place at the right time. And we have the technology today to determine what those products need to be and the equipment to get across the ground to put those products where they need to be, within inches of crops. Most of that is to mitigate waste. So we don't waste fertilizers or chemical. Everything's targeted and managed to achieve the desired outcome with as little secondary activity, off-target movement. So we take great care to produce our crops in a manner that is not going to destroy the very environment that our crops need to grow in. So it's, you could probably say it's a big laboratory experiment. We're soil testing for nutrients and determining what levels we need and using GPS guided variable rate solutions to put those products exactly where they need to be.
Wow.
So we don't over apply or under apply. And put the seeds in the ground, and at some point you got to pray and hope it all works out.
If it were a little bit drier, I'd ask to ride around in one of those big machines, which I don't even properly know how to call, but seems exciting.
Tractors, cotton pickers, combines, you name it, we can go take a look.
Okay. So you said you've got about 2,500 acres under cultivation.
Correct.
And what are the crops that you're growing?
Cotton, corn, and soybeans.
Okay. And where are those crops being sold to?
A lot of our crops, cotton specifically, is an export market. The raw fiber is exported. The seed is used, a lot of it is used domestically. A lot of which, where we're at, just south of Memphis, our grain can very easily get to the Gulf of America, and then it hits world markets from there.
Okay.
The corn can be turned into ethanol, which in the Midwest, that's, an attractive option. We can feed it. A lot of domestic use for livestock. I mentioned the ethanol.
Silage, is that the right word for that?
You can grow corn for silage and then feed it to the livestock. Essentially, our corn is used to make something else.
Okay.
In a lot of situations. Our soybeans can be crushed for oil. Okay. And if you look at ingredient labels, you'll see soybean oil fairly regularly.
Yeah.
The cotton, obviously the lint for fiber and for thread, cloth, clothing. The seed can be crushed for oil, which actually some industry groups have done research that cottonseed oil is healthier than olive oil.
Wow.
Well, and that's kind of some of the stuff that, I wish everybody knew that so we could create a lot of demand for our cottonseed.
Oh my God.
But there's some good research.
Do you know, does it have omega-3s in it or omega-6s or polyphenols?
I didn't print out the specs, but health studies have shown it's healthier.
I'm ready to start using cottonseed oil when I cook.
I highly recommend it.
You are wearing a cotton shirt?
Correct. I fully support cotton as a renewable and sustainable fiber, as opposed to synthetic fibers, which that's I guess another sore spot with microplastics today. And
this is a cotton shirt. I didn't plan it that way, but it is.
Well, that works out well.
Yeah.
But no, microplastics. Some studies have said I don't know about worldwide, but in America, we may be consuming a credit card worth of plastic, or maybe that equates to 12 plastic grocery bags annually.
Jeez.
And I don't think all of it's going back out. They found it in a lot of places you don't want plastic.
Jeez.
So where are we headed on that front? We'll see. But that's a synthetic, typically petroleum-based product. So
that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. My mom is stressed about microplastics. She's always texting me about microplastics.
I highly recommend cotton.
Yeah. Can you ever point to a product in a grocery store and say that for sure includes something I grew? Or for the cotton, like at the mall or in a clothing store?
So for the grains, I think the technical definition is I produce bulk, undifferentiated commodities. So a bushel of my number 2 yellow corn is not different. There's no difference in my corn versus a bushel of Midwestern corn. And the market calls for corn, and that's what they get.
So you go to church. Talk to me about the role faith plays in your life.
So, in my line of work, with so many uncontrolled variables with the weather and whatnot, it would be very hard to do what I do without faith. Jesus Christ died on the cross for our sins. And that big black hole that we try to fill with, a big farm or successful crops or prestige, wealth, whatever, you can pour a lot in that hole, but nothing's ever going to fill it up except for faith. And that's what keeps us going keeps me going. When I can't create a solution to solve my problems, I know that ultimately I will be taken care of. Will it be how I want? That's not my choice to make. But I will be taken care of.
That's beautiful. I'm going way off script here, but what do you think? Does life have a purpose? What's the purpose of life?
I should know the answer to this. My purpose is to glorify my Lord and Savior, which I probably fail at continually every day. I'm trying to do better. That's my purpose. Now, worldly, I just want to get along, and I enjoy farming. I'd like to continue doing that. And if somebody wants to do something else, that's fine. And as long as I don't infringe on them and they don't infringe on me, I'm good with that.
Yeah. Okay. We're getting kind of into a values space. And if you were going to try to put words to your values, what would those values be?
Hard work, respect, honesty, personal responsibility. We can expand on those. I mean, that kind of covers most of the bases if you get those. The golden rule.
You mentioned that, and I think that that's a beautiful one. How would you articulate the golden rule?
Treat others as you want to be treated.
Thumbs up.
I mean, I would like to be nice to everybody. I doubt I am all the time, but I want people to treat me well. So I should treat them well in return.
That sounds like common sense to me.
It does sound like common sense.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about the election. Who'd you vote for?
I voted for Donald Trump.
Okay. And talk about what got you to the polls. What were you excited about when you cast that vote?
I'm just going to pull the pin on this grenade and let it go. I think there are large swaths of our society and our government that are dysfunctional for a whole host of reasons. And maybe it's time to burn the house down, figuratively.
Okay. Wow. And when you say burn the house down figuratively, obviously that's going to translate into something concrete. So what would that look like? You say large swaths of our society, of our government that are inefficient or not working. What does burn the house down mean?
I had a really good idea that I just forgot. Limited government might be, one way to characterize some of how I feel. Maybe we are not called to solve all of my problems and your problems at the same time, with some of the same people. Maybe we're doing too much. And if we could back off with our government and let the common citizen make more of their own decisions, then I can do whatever I want to do, and I can sink or swim at it. And my neighbor can do the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's a slippery slope of marginalized communities and those who are incapable of taking care of themselves, and how to manage, being humane versus just scorched earth, win or lose. So very complex topics, but the belief that the government's here to help us and they're going to solve our problems, I think is a waste of all of our times.
Yeah, I think you and I would probably agree on the boundary conditions. It can't be government does everything for us, and it can't be that we're 100% left to our own devices, which would be anarchy. It's got to be somewhere in the middle. I think probably where we would disagree is kind of where that needle falls. For you, tariffs are not an abstract thing, right? Like you're growing cotton, soybeans, corn, and a lot of that is sold internationally. Like you have a net profit, say, per acre, and that's going to be affected by tariffs. So how are you experiencing the current economic environment and the tariffs that are being enacted?
Prior to the tariffs, America's competitive edge in the export market or the global kind of ag market has been eroding. Our once prominence of high production, high quality, wonderful infrastructure, we could get whatever we needed to market instantly almost as fast as we could, and no other country in the world could do that. And so we set the standard. We let our infrastructure crumble. Our technology was sold or in some cases stolen from us to where our competitors today are essentially using our tools against us. That gets back into picking winners and losers. If they can produce it better or cheaper than we can, who's to say that they shouldn't? But when they're tearing down rainforest or open plains in other areas of the world, things that we in America say is not right. At what point do we say, well, we don't value the way they're doing it, and so we will, punish that behavior? I don't think tariffs are a end-all, be-all economic trade policy. I'm sure they have their place as complex and potentially broken as international trade is. There's always a incentive for any particular player to take advantage of any other player. And so maybe some tariffs would be beneficial in correcting some bad behavior in a free market. Long term, I don't know if it's the best avenue. Temporary, could see some benefits. There have been some instances historically of trade embargoes and tariff scenarios where the U.S. exported various commodities around the world, and those markets were lost in trade deals, be they tariffs or otherwise, and those markets never came back. And so that's difficult to culture a relationship over time with a customer and then have that all fall apart. And they're still hungry or they still need whatever the trade was over. And when they go find it elsewhere, so be it. Why deal with the person that, was hard to deal with? So very complex topic, but everything's changing constantly. And to think that markets or entire economies don't change over time is pretty naive. In America, we, used to be more, I guess, steel mills and, whatever classic America was, hands-on, repetitive manufacturing. Our standard of living and our population, some of those jobs are not as attractive now. And when cheap labor can be found in international markets, it's simple dollars and cents. If you can get something for $5 out of China and it's going to cost $15 to do it in the U.S., I would imagine on the shelf in Walmart next to each other, the American consumer is going to pick the $5 item. And so trade can be very healthy, but trade also picks winners and losers.
That's true. And I think a large part of having tariffs in the first place is saying these are strategically important industries, for example. So food production is something that we wouldn't want to offshore.
Correct.
And a lot of our agriculture is something that we don't want to offshore. When I was reading these articles about tariffs and farming, a lot of the articles said, okay, if we create these reciprocal tariffs with these countries, what we're creating is an opportunity for Brazil to come in with very cheap farmed products and eat up this market. And so tariffs, the existing set of tariffs that we had before Trump were put in after the Second World War for a different time and place, right? To prop up economies that we perceived as allies, to support a world order that has mostly changed. So I don't disagree that tariffs were due for a rethinking, but I'm having trouble making sense of this new set of tariffs that's being put in. And I wonder, I mean, you must be looking at the same data set as me and maybe have a way of making sense of it.
Time will tell. Just reading current news, a lot of countries are coming back to the table and saying, let's make a fair deal. And I think we ought to allow everybody to sit down and determine what that deal is. I don't get the impression that large-scale tariffs were designed to, we're going to put these in and we're going to leave them there in perpetuity. We're going to be an isolationist and we're just going to do our own thing here in America. There are definitely items that are overseas that we need. And there are items that we have that they need as well. Mm-hmm. Our economy has probably become much more technology, robotics, intellectual property, and some of the labor is elsewhere. Mm. And so you do have specialization, and all of those products moving around the world. Mm-hmm. Some of those countries are coming back, and I think an honest discussion of the actual facts and not talking points and what one side, what the chart one side wants to use versus the chart the other side wants to use. And, there are distinct situations where there's a 40% tariff on the books, but when you peek behind the curtain, they were only applying 2.5%. Mm. I just made those numbers up, but you have situations where the information being publicized could be skewed or it could mm-hmm. be not the whole story. And so it complicates getting to a solution mm-hmm. when two sides have two different sets of numbers for varying reasons. Mm-hmm. And we can't just sit down and talk about, this is what's going on. You did this, I did that, and what kind of deal are we going to make going forward?
Yeah. And I've got one more tariffs question, and then we can move on. And I admire you for tiptoeing with me right up to the edge of a political conversation. So you're a fairly small farmer in the big scheme of things. 2,500 acres is a very respectable amount, but compared to some of these farmers who have millions and tens of millions of acres, not huge. And I know that farming, depending on the year, is not a fabulously profitable profession, right? You really have to be wise about your unit economics. So for somebody with 2,500 acres who's growing cotton, corn, and soybeans, what is the economic impact of these tariffs?
The financial picture before the tariffs was not a positive place for cotton, corns, and soybeans. The tariffs are not helping with lower commodity prices right now. The markets have been reacting. They may be overreacting. I hope our leaders can solve this problem. I was entertaining trading a piece of equipment that 2 weeks ago seemed a little bit more favorable, and now an international buyer may not legally be able to purchase my equipment.
Wow.
So we're going to put that on the back burner for a minute. These large international corporations that may be headquartered here or do a lot of manufacturing here may source parts and supplies from around the world. And you get in a situation where I don't have the luxury of time. If I've got to be in the field, I have to be in the field. And if a certain component of my equipment or some input I need comes from across a international border, while I appreciate everybody playing by the rules, agriculture does not have time to wait for it to play out over a couple of years. We're in a pretty tight spot. We were in a very difficult spot in 24. The position is probably eroded into 25. And I kind of personally, just speaking for myself, over a career, whatever's remaining going forward, we could do death by 1,000 cuts of playing the game the way it was being played, or we can do something about it. There were a lot of international players not behaving well.
Let's zoom out a little bit. If I were to ask you, how's democracy going in the USA? What would your answer be to that?
Dumpster fire.
Yeah, I don't disagree. What do you think is going on?
I think we've all gone to our corners and we've set up our defenses, and anybody left in the middle just doesn't care. I don't agree with the left. The far left. I don't agree with the far right. I just want to be me and be allowed to do what I would like to do. And I'm fine with other people doing what they want to do, as long as neither of us infringe on each other. I think there are things that we should research and look at problems, and if they're reasonable solutions, that's fine. But unreasonable blanket application of ideology or thought that works well in a densely urban environment may not apply to rural America. The same way that the way I live my life probably wouldn't function in New York City.
Probably. There are way too many chickens around here.
No, I mean, we spend, I should know the number to the penny, but $10,000-$15,000 a year on regulatory stuff, special fluid that makes our equipment run, breakdowns on needless components of our equipment to abide by regulatory measures. If somebody can prove that farm tractors are ruining the environment, I'd be willing to look at it. But, is it the airliner over above or the, trucks going across the road? If we can come up with durable, workable solutions to improve the environment, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
But just very, I guess, heavy-handed tactics.
And it feels like it's being painted with a broad brush, right? That there's no consideration for the environment around here or your line of work.
If you're going to have a car with a battery in it, let's talk about the net result of that.
Okay.
Where did that lithium come from? Was it some poor child in a, foreign country that had to mine that? And maybe that's because our environmental regulations will not allow us to tap potential lithium here in the U.S. And so just everywhere you turn, we demand a certain level or a certain action for ourselves. We have this high standard, but we're going to look the other way while we go get what we need elsewhere. And then all the transportation and different parts. And, once you add it all up, I think one example is like a wind turbine. We have wind turbines 30 miles south of here. Financially, I think it's a great idea. These companies have petitioned the government for bald eagle permits. They're take permits. So if they get caught with a dead eagle on the premises, they pay some fine, or they use their permit, their get out of jail free card.
Okay.
And they're back in business. And how have we spent this much time protecting natural resources, and now we're allowing, essentially meat grinders in their environment?
Wow.
And so I get to points like that, and I'm like, riddle me that. I've had an environmental, I don't even know what his job title is, but one of the few people that can do an environmental impact study.
Mm-hmm.
And he said if you asked him to put his finger on a map for the worst place to put some of these renewable energy power generation plants, he could put them right here because it's so wild with avian and terrestrial wildlife. I'm not going to say I'm against renewables. Maybe not in my backyard, or maybe we could sit down and figure out a proper placement and a proper, where do these technologies fit best? I appreciate that there are a lot of population centers with a lot of people that will never see or be impacted by this. So why do they come dump it on us?
It may surprise you to hear that actually none of this seems wrong to me, what you're saying, right? It's like it feels like somebody very far away made these rules and decisions, and that there isn't any consideration of the local environment or what people around here do for work. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say. And I mean, follow the money. If somebody showed up at my doorstep today and provided sign here and you have financial freedom for the next 2 or 3 generations, I'm not going to say I wouldn't sign that. And when you tote a lot of money around, you pretty much get your way. And the numbers of these renewable projects versus just conventional agriculture, it's no comparison. So I understand how it happens, and private property rights are vital to our country. And nobody's going to tell me what I can or can't do on my property the same way that I'm not going to tell them what they can do. So if they want to build solar panels or wind turbines or whatever the next latest greatest is, so be it. And having a discussion about proper placement could infringe on this private property right. So it's a difficult subject. If there is a net positive, maybe it's worth it, but I have yet to see it.
Yeah, I mean, something that you said that sort of rung a bell for me was, if you have the money to create the influence and create the legislation, then of course you're going to get it. And that seems to be a theme in people that I'm talking to, is the sense that for the right price, the legislation could be yours, right? Do you think that money in politics is one of the problems?
I'm sure the left hates the Koch brothers, and everybody on the right hates George Soros. It takes the power away from that democratic republic where we elect our representatives, and our representatives represent us. When being a politician is a career, and somehow those careers are extremely lucrative, and nothing ever gets done out in the real world, except for the included classes becoming even wealthier, it disenfranchises a lot of just average people, I guess. Our government is populated by some of the best stock market prognosticators ever. Nothing to see there. The whole career politician, I think successful people used to spend time in government, and then go back to whatever they were doing. It wasn't the goal from the cradle to grave to be a politician. If our politicians were successful and the country was successful and everybody was happy, I might feel differently about it. I think it's a career and they're taking care of themselves. If I was there, I would probably do the same thing.
That's an interesting point that you make, which is, I think human nature is what it is, right? If you put people in front of an opportunity to make a lot of money on just by being a politician and making insider bets on the stock market, I think most people will. I think it's just human nature. I think that I can imagine guardrails on that kind of thing.
Voted in by the very people. No, I mean, the politicians would have to install those guardrails themselves, which is why they're not there. Now, I'm involved in some local and maybe a little bit larger organizations that advocate for agriculture and advocate for conservation locally. I mean, we do what we can. It's an uphill battle, bureaucratic red tape, and we fight for what we value, and the other side fights for what they value, and it's a game. If you want to talk to the politicians, you better bring a check. If that's the game, we're going to keep playing it, and we're going to keep getting the results we're getting right now, which is excessive volatility, which is hard for everybody to live with.
Yeah, you and I had kind of a getting ready conversation for this conversation, and we were talking about the temperature rising politically and how the volatility increasing, the swings getting bigger, and how I don't think anybody wins with the high temperature and the bigger swings back and forth. What do you think?
Well, you win today and then you lose tomorrow. So at the end of the day, nothing has really been accomplished. And that gets back to, I think previously I mentioned, maybe our government is too involved. It's too complex. It's too large. It's doing too much. If we as citizens of this country could be more responsible for our own condition, and in turn the condition of those around us, it seems workable to me, but I'm willing to put forth the effort. I would imagine there are a lot of other people that it would be very painful to take away what they have and make them earn it.
That's an interesting point of view. I kind of don't want to touch that. I was thinking, like, when you go to the local and regional politicians and you bring your check and the other side goes and talks to them and they bring their check, that to me seems like wasted money.
I would agree.
I mean, like, I can envision a world in which nobody's allowed to bring a check. And then, hey, you get to just keep that money.
I mean, it would be just as equal then as it is now, without the money.
Imagine. What about the two-party system? What do you think about it?
I mean, country's a dumpster fire, so, I mean, we can look internationally at systems with many other parties, and it's still the same politics. I mean, I'm not advocating for wholesale disbandment of, basic fundamental government. I think the government ought to take their hands off of a lot of things. But then that means we have to be responsible for them. And human beings struggle to take care of each other.
Yeah. I sometimes wonder, it's like 330 million people is a lot. I checked, I have 1,500 contacts on my phone, and I don't know who half of them are. And trying to keep track of 1,500 people is a lot. Trying to keep track of 330 million people is a lot.
Well, I think the goal being a silver bullet that solves everyone's problems is just a false goal.
Yeah.
And if that's what we're trying to do, we'll never be successful.
And actually, a theme of so much of what you're saying is the same brush can't paint everybody in the country, right? It's the same rule. In many cases, works over here, but over here it's just asinine and stupid. And so, if we could somehow manage to get more granular or more particular with the way government is applied, maybe that would be better. Or you're just saying?
Well, I think if you say more granular, then the government's touching all those grains. And then we're back to the same problem. We're all created uniquely. And I don't believe that this world is supposed to be perfect and happy and rainbows and unicorns all day, every day. And if that's our goal, then we're going to fail every single time.
This is a great moment to ask you, what is America?
I mean, I would rewind, be it 30, 50, 75 years ago, defeating evil, working hard and creating something tangible, something that allowed those at the top to be happy. It allowed those in the middle to be happy. And there was some room to take care of the people at the bottom. Maybe you could move back and forth amongst those classes. Not necessarily, define classes. We would have to have classes, but I would define it as I stated, but I would imagine somebody else could define it a completely different way. I think to say we should all be happy and get along is probably a pipe dream. Maybe we can tolerate each other.
Yeah. When I say, what is the American dream? Like, if America were working great, not perfect, but if it were working well, what would that look like? How would that feel?
More secure. I think that could be financial or belief systems, or, maybe turn the temperature down. I mean, I can barely watch the news, period. I don't know, people getting along and taking care of each other. There's a lot of negative and violent stuff that goes on, and somebody made that choice to do that. What do you think America should be?
I hear you saying it can be a land of opportunity and a place where we take care of each other. Those were the two themes that you kept coming back to. And to me, this is another moment where it's like, wow, Jim and I guess, are kind of on the same page. I see it as a place that makes people free.
Well, and I think that opportunity goes both ways.
Yeah.
You can have the opportunity to live in a van down by the river, or you can have the opportunity to be successful.
Yeah.
And neither side has the ability to make the other one pay for it.
Uh-huh.
So if you want to be worthless, broke, it's fine with me. If you want to be successful, that's great too.
So like you, I think personal responsibility plays a huge part in my worldview. I think that at a certain point, you have to take responsibility for who you are and where you are. I think probably you would agree with me that also there are cases where people have disabilities or they've been hit by tragedies. Maybe somebody got in a car accident and they don't have insurance, where today they would not be taken care of by the state. They would just kind of be left to fend for themselves. I see you have a thought.
If if they made the choices to put themselves in that poor place, I mean, if they intentionally, you know, if they got pulled over and their car was not taken away because they didn't have insurance and they run through the courts morning, noon, and night, and then something bad happens to them, you know, if you made your own bed, you get to sleep in it. That's not very compassionate. But when the compassion is taken advantage of, then the well starts running dry.
I hear that. And I think, again, we could probably agree on an upper and a lower bound, and then kind of where you come down in the middle on how many chances somebody should get or how involved the government should be. That's where
Well,
we're going to differ.
it gets into the minutia and trying to fine tune a perfect solution
Yeah.
that I would argue without faith is impossible. And so I look at a lot of things in this world and I'm like, y'all are wasting your time arguing about where are the bounds and should they be here or there. And then we're mad at each other and nobody wants to talk and we go back to our own corners and nothing gets done.
I'm really grateful for my career in tech for the last 8 years for so many reasons, not the least of which is going into any project. At the beginning of the project, you say, this is how we're going to know if it's successful, right? It's going to be this number or these two numbers. And you're always managing to those outcomes, right? And I think that often in America, when we start to have a debate, for example, about healthcare costs, for example, it becomes a debate about should and morality, which of course we're never going to solve. And both sides have strong moral convictions, which ultimately we could just run around all day on. But if we were to reframe the debate in terms of we think that, we want people to achieve these health outcomes on average, or we want to increase life expectancy by this much, right? If we could agree on what success looked like and then manage to the outcome, then we would get a lot less hung up on, oh, this person deserves health care or this person has to lay in their bed because they made it that way. Because I don't know these people. I don't want to make moral judgments about them. That's my thought when you said that.
You mentioned healthcare. Our country had the envy of the entire world. And now you can see statistically us falling back a little bit. Nothing wrong with working on that. Moving the goalpost perpetually is dysfunctional. No, there are some very common sense issues we can deal with, but that's not what we're going to talk about. The health lobby is going to show up, and then the food lobby is going to show up, and before you know it, we're where we're at right now.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think common sense. Look at the net result. You said have a couple of standards to achieve, and if we could just be honest about what the situation is,
Yep.
and manage to a positive outcome. It's difficult though in this environment.
I completely agree. I think
you talk healthcare, tort reform, private, and the doctors have to pay the insurance for the malpractice which ends up running the cost through the roof.
about half the billboards in Memphis are those personal injury lawyers.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, this is a weird economy where the most profitable businesses and all the billboards are coming from attorneys who exist to sue doctors and workplaces. It's just weird. And I saw some research from the Pew Research Center that says 67% of Americans think that the cost of healthcare is a very big problem. It's their biggest problem, and their priority number one for addressing. And I think right now on either side politically, that's on nobody's radar. There's not a plan. We're not talking about it. And this is an example. I mean, this podcast project this year is a thought experiment in what if things weren't so asinine and wrong. You know, like I know so many brilliant people working so hard. You know, Americans lead the world in productivity, and it's a very wealthy, productive place. And so why should things be so terrible?
Because somebody's taking advantage of the system.
Say more.
I mean, it's pretty basic.
Yeah.
I mean, the insurance company charges more to insure the doctor to support the lawyer that's going to sue him. That's all transferred to either an individual or a corporation or the government. Needless cost. I mean, that's healthcare. They're examples.
But okay, the insurance company, for example, the way they are graded is quarterly returns, shareholder value. And they don't get a grade on how healthy people are or how long they live. And they don't get a grade if they're able to cut costs and make healthcare more efficient. And that seems fairly obvious to me as a way that we should grade insurance companies if we want to have insurance companies.
What was the Obamacare, Affordable Care Act? I mean, that was no more than a joke. And if that's what's coming out, I mean, that was, I guess, the last major push. I mean, there's been some, prescription drug stuff here and there, but no, I mean, I think you're completely right. Common sense, people are getting sicker and we're all paying more for it. So something's wrong.
Life expectancy declined for the first time in the USA in many decades.
Nobody's talking about it.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we care about something else.
What's giving you hope?
The sun's out today. No, my hope, I'm here by myself out in the country, well, with my family, but we have a plot of land and I'm farming and enjoy it. And we have the freedoms to move about as we please. Repeat the question so I can think some more about it.
What's giving you hope?
I don't know. America's always seemed to find a way through. Surely we won't be the ones to break it.
That's hope. That's hope.
Maybe a couple of years ago, I would have been much more hopeful. Not relative to, I guess current politics is influencing it to some degree, but it's just so volatile now on all fronts, not just politically, but just everywhere you turn, that it's almost like I'm going to go to my corner and pay attention, but I'm not going to stick my hand in and get burned.
What's next for you?
We're going to drive back through some flood water to your car here shortly. Going to go pick up my kids this afternoon. 2025 does not look real fabulous for my business, but it's not the first time any industry struggled a little bit, and it'll refine us, and 26 we hope is better.
Thank you very much, Jim.
We hope 25's better too.
Yeah, keeping my fingers crossed for you.
Definitely. I hope your project works out. Sounds interesting.
Thanks. Well, we'll see, I guess.
A year-long vacation, right?
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Jim and I have a lot in common. Our moms were friends way back in the day, and we actually went to the same high school, although we didn't know each other at the time. Jim was a few years older than I was. And that's where our paths diverged. After college, Jim moved back out to the country, whereas I built my career in West Coast cities like Portland and San Francisco. I admire Jim. We may not agree on everything, but I can say with 100% confidence that Jim is a person of deep integrity. He cares a lot about these issues, and he's thought hard about them. As you heard, Jim is a passionate advocate for the natural environment. So how do we protect our ecosystems without making the economics of being a small farmer unworkable? How do we keep U.S. agricultural products competitive on the world stage? Finally, how do we turn down the temperature on our political discourse? The pendulum swings seem to be getting bigger and bigger, and the only people who benefit are career politicians and the very wealthy. Okay, question. Do you know somebody in Detroit? It's such a fascinating place. It's a very American city, and I'm thinking about stopping there after Allentown, Pennsylvania. But the thing is, I don't know a soul in Detroit. I'm looking for someone who can explain to me how the city works and maybe even introduce me to some potential interviews. If you know somebody like that, I would truly appreciate an intro. My email is whatisamericapodcast@gmail.com. If you're looking to stay connected, the best thing you can do is sign up for our newsletter. It's basically my shower thoughts on the journey, as well as links to the latest podcast episode. Go to whatisamericapodcast.com and enter your email. I am taking baby steps on social media. I've been off these platforms for the last 7 years, but recently recreated my accounts. I'm on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and yes, TikTok. If you're looking to just put me in your AirPods, you can find the audio edition of What is America on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Say It With Me, wherever you get your podcasts. I'd love to know what you think of our cover image. Before we get out of here, I want to say thank you to 3 people who have recently cooked dinner for me. When you're on the road, you kind of take what you can get food-wise. Often that means fast food or even takeout. So having an honest-to-God home-cooked meal and sitting down around a dinner table can be a total game changer. Those 3 people are Jen Frank and my cousins, Brig and Mindy. Next week is another week, and I'm really excited to share the next interview with you. Until then, I'll leave you with the Gandhi quote that launched this whole crazy adventure. The act may seem small, but it's important that you do it. Thanks very much for tuning in, and I'll see you soon.